Good morning or good afternoon, depending from which time zone you are joining us for this session. It's a session in the Activate event 2021. And I am Ronnie Timmermans from Xenit, presenting you our vision on how you can move from content chaos into cognitive clarity. We were founded 14 years ago. We have thus 14 years of experience in enterprise content management and intelligent information management. We manage over 300 million documents for our customers. Mainly, the big volumes are in the insurance sector. Our customers in the insurance sector generate lots of documents, of course, most of them automatically. Fresco is an open source ECM that is very close to our heart. We love open source, as is Solar, for instance, at the core of Fusion of LucidWorks. We do, next to enterprise content management, also enterprise search, of course, with Fusion. And we strive to bring maximum clarity in user interfaces, documentation, and everything we do, and scale our solutions very well. I think that's where we want to have our distinguishing mark in the market. Content chaos. Well, that's not a new problem. It's even not something that we invented. It is clear that if you look at the challenge for the coming years, content chaos, ever-growing content of diverse nature is one of the big topics to tackle. Now, content and control are dogs and cats. It's very difficult to tame and to control content. They are fighting between each other, content and control, very often, because it's very hard to centralize content. Content is created by people, and people are creative, and people seek the way of least resistance, and they use the tools that best suit them. On top of that, when we speak about content, what do we mean with that? It's very heterogeneous. It's not so simple like my invoices or my orders in a ERP system. There's different types of content, and we have to manage them in different use cases. I would say even there's a large degree of entropy in content. Content can go viral, so it's a very special type of information. We have all silos of wikis, online document collaboration with Office 365, Google Drive, etc., desktop sync solutions, Box, Dropbox, ECMs, Fresco, Documentum, FileNet, OpenText, you name them, and there are even specialized archives. All of these systems are siloed, they fill in a need, so they have a reason to exist, but together, when you apply them all together, you would amplify content chaos, because you create lots of silos. That is a problem, and it's a problem which is inherent to the nature of content. Content is used in three big use cases. I think you see that on the right in the pie chart. There is collaborative content, very often created with Office tools, transactional content, which is most often created by backend and enterprise systems, and then there is the system of record, because we need to retain that kind of content for a longer period for legal and compliance reasons. So next to the pie chart, I've tried to very simply illustrate the fact that transactional content and collaboration content could be called active content because it's changed, it's used, it's referenced, it's modified, while at some point that content goes into the archive. So it goes from an active state into an archive. So these silos, I think, and all the complexity and the use cases and the life cycles of content, we have to accept them. And it's even worse because it's in many silos. So what can we do to alleviate that problem? There comes in, of course, LucidWorks and Fusion. Search can help. And I have two slides, one on federated search and one on enterprise search, just to make a little bit of difference and to position how that kind of search functionality can bring the silos together. Because that's in the end what we want to do, to tame the the content chaos, we want to join and bring the silos of content together. First of all, about federated search. In simple words, it is you don't create a single search engine, you create a facility that will use the search functionality of all the underlying repositories or systems, be it ERP, CRM, be it file systems with documents, be it an enterprise content management solution, be it your SharePoint. What you do is you create a service that accepts queries from the users, dispatches that service to all the underlying repositories, collects the information, and brings back the result to the user. So we create, so to speak, a single point of search for our users. In some cases, federated search can work well. Search is traditionally already present, of course, into vertical business applications. SAP has a search functionality. Search is part of a database. It works well for structured data in those vertical applications because the data are close to the process and the task and very relevant to a specific context. What happens is once these data are not active anymore, that is, the product is made, it's sold, the transaction is done, the invoice is paid, then those data end up in a data warehouse. I believe that federated search can indeed work well on these structured data because it's a simpler problem. Very often the source of truth of data is just in one of those backend systems. So when you do a federation, you go to SAP, you get information about the invoices, that information comes back. And there is not too much of federation to do. That's very well. And it works for backend systems with well-separated structured data. Now, for content, that's different because it's they all carry information. All these sources carry information about an item that you have to search for. So that means that from federated search, you would move to the next step. The next step being central or enterprise search. Why is that different? This is a bit the Google approach. You have a search engine and it's going to crawl and index the different underlying data sources. Those different underlying systems don't have to have a search capability by themselves. It can be, for instance, a set of file systems with documents. The central enterprise search will index those and will provide search functionality. It has some advantages to work in this way. For instance, you have a central model, not just a domain model. So we say, okay, when we accept data, we will store them according to a certain domain model, according to an invoice has an invoice number and an amount. And you can also have a single access model in the indexing engine. So you can control access in one spot, access to the search results, of course. If you want to do proper relevance ranking, you need to have this approach because you cannot have in a federated search that these components will work together to give you the right relevance ranking. You need to have all the information available in your indexes to do correct relevance ranking. That's why enterprise search has an advantage at that point. There is another advantage of central search, that is, whenever you are ingesting the data, you can enrich the data according to rules which are centralized. Again, in federated search, there is no enrichment of data. There is just a passing, a relay of your query to the underlying systems. With a central search system, whenever we ingest data, we could extract extra information, enrich that data before we put it in the central index. For instance, you can detect additional metadata or concepts in documents when you store them. Now, there is also a big problem in central search, and that problem has to do with what I would call the German Coast Guard problem. We'll have a look at the video that goes along with that.
Das hier ist mein Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Küstenwächters. Das Gerät und das Gerät. Überlebensradar.
Mayday, Mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... Over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
So the problem is syncing. You need to sync those underlying data sources into the central index, and that creates the problem of eventual consistency. That is, your searches are not up to date in real-time queries. And that syncing problem, it's not just a eventual consistency problem. It is even worse because it's very hard to keep two data sources synced alongside each other, and certainly to do that in real time. Of course, Fusion and Solr provide ever more advanced functionality and facilities to do that. But this is an issue and a challenge with central search. Now, nevertheless, that syncing problem can be solved. And that means that in our vision, if you want to tame content chaos, you will see much more central search as a service in newer architectures and in the architecture of the future for enterprises. Next to, given that central search will help us to manage content chaos, I think it's not enough. You also need a good model, a Metamodel even, to make enterprise search work. What do we mean with that? On the left-hand side, you see a model of a plane. It's not a plane itself. On the right-hand side, you see a theoretical diagram. Huh? If you look at what is a model, well, it speaks about an employee with an employee name and an employee number. The Metamodel says that, okay, you're going to model the reality of your company and the master data of your company with things like attributes, classes, operations. So that's something that you standardize in the company, that you communicate, and doing this also needs to have a direct input in how you would search for information. It is defining your common language. You can do that with things like UML, RDF, OEL, if you want to do it in the semantic web way, but you can also do it with simple entity relation diagrams. You need that model. It helps you to make sense of all the information that you're indexing in the central system. So that's a point that we want to make. Content chaos can be countered by having central search, because then it's not such a problem that the information is in silos. People can find it back. Central search is a single point of access. But you can centralize the model, the conceptual model in heads. It's easier to centralize a conceptual thing than a physical thing in silos. How does that look, that Metamodel, in the land of content silos? This is the Metamodel. It's clear, you can apply it in many cases. In our case, enterprise content management, what does that mean? It means that you don't do things that we have done in the past, like trying to shoehorn documents into document types. Sometimes a document is a clear type. An invoice, that's a clear type, it has clear properties. A contract is a clear type. It has a contracting party or contracting parties. It could have a validity. It could have a domain of application, of applicability, jurisdiction, etc. So those are clear content types or document types, but that doesn't always apply. So in a better way to model this is, you model just your business entities, and there is a customer, a contract, and a claim. This is a very small example from the insurance world. What is now the trick? Well, model your documents also as entities, not per se as document types, just as entities. Contract and a claim, it has metadata, and it has associations with the business concepts, like customer, contract, and claim. And this is actually very simple, very natural. And the way how we do it in other applications And because content actually serves those other applications, it should comply with that way of modeling. This is not the way how it is traditionally done in the industry, but this is the better way how to do it. And if you do it like that, you have a fine model as well to power your enterprise search, your central model. So we need a new way as well to make, to have access control scalable applied on enterprise search. So first of all, we need a conceptual model to make enterprise search really work. Secondly, we have to solve the problem of access control. What's the challenge? Well, traditionally, access control is being arranged and managed in every single silo system. The ERP system, and the ERP system is not one silo, it's more silos, but it's integrated at the level of the application. But there is also a CRM, there are business applications, vertical applications, etc. They all apply in principle a similar model, which is role-based access control. That's pretty hard and pretty complex. It doesn't scale very well, and it's hard to harmonize because how ERP looks at things and how CRM looks at things is very different. But they all have to apply access control. Trying to merge that in a common model in your enterprise search is a challenge. So what we believe is there is a better way to do that. And that better way is what is called by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the next generation access control. And what it does is it goes back to the data and to the metadata. So the content of the document, or the content of the content, if you wish, will determine the access control. It's called ABAC, attribute-based access control. You could also call it policy-based access control. But in essence, what it does is it extracts, or it looks at the metadata at the document, and that metadata helps to determine the rules of access. So it's the document and the metadata themselves, the content, that allow to steer access control. And this principle can be applied on all content that you would bring together in your central server. So at the level of the central search index, we apply one model, which is the model of attributes to access content. This is a way how to harmonize and bring it together and let the content of the document drive the access control. It scales also very well. We have done some tests on scaling with that compared to role-based access control. It scales very well because it builds the principle of selection into the query processing. I can do another seminar on that if you wish, but it scales very well. What about machine learning and AI? Yes, it plays a role. Artificial intelligence can help because with machine learning and AI, we can extract things like entities and attributes, assign them to the content, so we can prepare the data, enrich the data before it reaches the central search server. Fitting all those parts together, we've been speaking about the Metamodel. That's important. That's the common language and the common model that needs to be embedded in your Fusion server. And with that arm in your hands, you can tackle the three big use cases: collaboration, transaction, and a system of record, joining things like Salesforce, Office Online, Alfresco as your system of record. In conclusion, what have we done, Xenit, with that? We have built a connector to Alfresco, which is our reference system of record, to Fusion. And Fusion has connectors for instance, collaboration environments, Office Online, transactional environments like Salesforce in the cloud, etc. And that allows you to bring results together in a single query. And that's it for my talk. I've been speaking about how to tame content chaos, centralized search, a central model, and attribute-based access control enriched with artificial intelligence that we think can bring a solution to the problem. Thank you very much. I hope to see you again later on in any session, or if you have questions, here is our reference or website or email. Feel free to contact us.